Good evening, everyone, and welcome wherever you're listening to. Welcome to this evening's webinar, and happy Monday. We've made it back. We've rescheduled the webinar that we promised you, and we're really sorry that we couldn't broadcast on the 27th of January, but we are here today, and that's what matters. We're raring to go. So welcome to the Fundamental of Phonics. I'm Costa Constantinu, and joining us this evening, shall I say, is Alexandra Charalambous, one of our lead associates who delivers training on phonics, well-being, literacy on behalf of Veema Education. So there you can see Alexandra, and she will be taking today's webinar. We will have questions at the end, so if you do have a question or if there's something that you would like to ask us, we will be taking questions in the last 5 or 10 minutes, and we will try to get everyone's questions answered. If we don't, then feel free to just email us after the webinar and we will give you a response. Now, before I pass you over to Alexandra, just a few things from me, just a little reminder about what we do at Veema Education and some of our offerings. So we do deliver a range of training, whether it's online or bespoke face-to-face training. I know that most of you follow us on Twitter or receive our newsletter with all our resources in. But you know, this is some of the training that we offer. If you do have particular training requirements or there's something that you're interested in, because our webinars are just a taster of some of the things that we offer, then do get in touch with us to see how we can support you. You might have also recently received some information about our DFE professional qualifications, our leadership courses that we are now running. Again, if this is something that you're interested in finding out more for yourself or for other colleagues in your school, then please do get in touch. They are the DFE approved qualifications, and we have started to run those as of month. Before I pass you over to Alexandra, she begins today's webinar, just one final thing from me. As you know, you can connect with us on lots of different platforms. We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, on our website, and as always, you can email us. And do subscribe to our newsletter if you're not receiving our newsletter. Do subscribe to our newsletter because we do have lots of free papers, resources, little things that you can read up on and try out in the classroom. That's really important to us that we're sharing this information with you. So do connect with us on the various platforms that you see there because we really do love hearing. I think that's enough from me. Enjoy the webinar. I'm going to pass you over to Alexandra, who I know is really keen to get started. Like I said, if you have questions, then start to get those into us, and we will answer those towards the end of the webinar. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you very much, Costa, and hello everyone, good evening, and apologies again for the rescheduling of this webinar on phonics. You can't help technical issues sometimes, so really pleased to have those of you that have tuned in tonight to hear all about phonics. So the fundamentals of phonics is what we're going to be spending time on in the next 50 minutes or so. So it's really about going back to the basics of phonics, because what we've got with teachers nowadays is that you do move around into different year groups and key stages. So you may have had training, maybe at least 10 years ago for some of you, in phonics and early years and so on. And you probably have moved around and things do change. So it's great to have a refresher, a reminder, making sure that everyone's on an even keel with phonics, all our understanding with that. So it's really, really important that we've got that grounding. Likewise, you might have some students, if you're in Key Stage 2 or the age range 7 to 11, you've still got some children not where they should be, struggling perhaps with some of their reading or their spelling, and you need to know what to give them, what strategies that can support them to develop their reading skills. So we're going to cover some of that as well. So it's going to be quite interactive. There'll be some activities for you to do, so please make sure you've got pen and paper to hand. there'll be some short tasks that you can complete as well. So hopefully you can all see the aims of this evening's session. So we're going to go over the basics of phonics and the key terms, the terminology that we use for children. We're going to articulate the phonemes accurately. So that's a bit of a skill in itself, how to pronounce sounds. And we're going to understand how blending and segmenting work for reading and spelling. Those are the two skills that we need to teach children so that they can apply to unknown words. So let's make a start. So what is phonics? What does it encompass? Well, it's about identifying the sounds in a spoken word. So such as the word stop, it has got 4 sounds, 4 phonemes. It's got a s, t, op. So those are the sounds in the word stop. Phonics also involves recognizing the common spellings of each phoneme. So as an example, we could give you the phoneme A, and there are different spelling options to write down for that A sound. We call those graphemes. So you probably can think of one as an AY. You can think of the AI and a split E. So those are just 3 options of writing down the A sound, the A phoneme. There are actually a lot more for that sound. And then, as I said earlier, the skills that we need to be able to read and decode words are blending. So we blend the phonemes into words for reading. And as an example, for at, blending them, putting them together makes the word hat. It's no good saying H-A-T using the letter names, because for a child that doesn't help with blending. So it's at, and then you blend it to make hat. And then final bullet point says segmenting words into phonemes for spelling. So if we could take the word hat, what we're doing is breaking it up into individual sounds this time, and the child will then write the letters out to spell the word. So for hat, we've got the letter H, A, T, or act, and then the child will scribe those letters down in order from left to right. Okay, so these are the facts really about the English language. So we have 44 phonemes and 26 letters, and that's what's taught in the progression of the phonics phases as well. So we make sure that it is cumulative. We start with the single letter sounds, and then we continue with 2-letter sounds and 3-letter sounds and so on. So a phoneme, a sound, can be represented by 1 or more letters. And there's 3 examples there. We've got t, n, which has 2 letters, and I, that has 3 letters. We could have the same phoneme that can be represented or spelt in more than one way. As I mentioned earlier, the A sound can be represented in these 3 different ways. And here's where it gets a little bit more complex. We could have the same grapheme letters, and they can represent more than one phoneme. So you can see the EA here can be an E sound in mean and an F in depth. And we've got the IE grapheme can be an E sound in field and an I sound in tried. So that's looking at the later phases of phonics, where once children have grasped the fundamentals, the foundations even, they can then begin to look at graphemes that can be represented by more than one sound. So there is an element of memory, lots of repetition, and exposure to lots and lots of words in different contexts so that children who grasp this understanding. So we're going to start with the articulation of the 44 phonemes, and it is a bit of a technical skill, and some people, even professionals that I meet on a daily basis, find this quite a challenge and say, oh, I've been doing it wrong. So let's have a go at what that looks like. Because it is really important that we have this really secure, and for the child to be able to articulate clearly and precisely. So for some of the sounds, they can be pretty bouncy. So I'll give you an example. We've got the, d, g. They're kind of short and bouncy. Now, some other sounds are stretchy and elongated. So for the l sound and the sound, you can see I'm keeping my lips in exactly the same place. So what happens with some people is that they pronounce it with a l and a m, n. That's called the schwarring. That's kind of adding on that additional sound, which doesn't help when the child is having to blend, because it really gets in the way, that bit at the end. So some sounds are really, really stretchy, and it's really good to practice articulating these sounds for children, and that's what we are just going to do ourselves. When we are practicing these sounds, on the next slide, I also want you to listen out for sounds that are unvoiced. And what I mean by that is you cannot hear my voice coming through. Here's an example. Hopefully you've spotted that that is the letter F, and I've made the sound. There is no sound coming out. Whereas a voice sound, B, has a voice. You can hear my voice. One way to check that is you can put your hand on your larynx and see if there's any movement there. So instead of F, you can feel the vibration there. But without that, there shouldn't be anything happening in the larynx. So we're going to start with articulating the consonants. So I'm going to make the sounds, and if you can just repeat them after me. I can't hear you, obviously, but I'll give you a beat to copy it. So try and say out loud at the same time as me. It's also helpful if you're looking at my mouth. I will try and get a little closer to see the shape of my mouth, the tongue placement, and all those quite important things. So let's go. B, D, G, J, L, M, N, P, R, S, T, U, W, W, R, Z, Ch, Sh, Okay, that last sound is my least favourite. Hope everybody got on well with that, and there weren't any shocks or surprises. Of course, if you are sort of slightly startled by what you've just heard, do drop us a comment at the end, a question, and I've got a clip also to send through that you can go and practice on. Hopefully you spotted the unvoiced sounds as well, and also there was a mixture of bouncy and stretchy sounds in there. Okay, let's move on to vowels. So we've got 5 short vowel sounds. We've got A, E, I, O, U. You can really see me over exaggerating, and that's something that's really important for children to do, to see your mouth, and you've got to really show them the difference of O and A, particularly if you've got children who are learning English or are new to English. Obviously they may have their own home languages where they've got their own slight differences with the sounds. I know I've taught in very multicultural schools, especially with children with Urdu. They've often struggled with I and E sounds, so you've really got to demonstrate that. So there's a series of long vowel sounds as well. Let's carry on with that. We've got A, E, I, O, U. So those are the 5 long vowel sounds. Then we've got U, R, O, ow, oi, ear. Okay. Give you a moment to process some of those sounds as well. So you can see some of them did sound particularly similar, didn't they? We've got OR, or, and then AU next to it. I want her to show you or. So thinking of the word born and autumn. Very similar sounds there. So hopefully you, let's go back to the consonants. Which were the unvoiced sounds? So let's have a look. They're highlighted in red, so I'll go over those again. Did you spot that there are two ways of making this grapheme, this spelling option? As in the word thumb, and there's a little tickle on your tongue, like the word these. There's two variations there. Sh, sh. Those were the unvoiced sounds. So if you want to hear those sounds articulated again, there is a clip on YouTube, and all you need to type in is articulation of phonemes, and you'll see a lady's mouth making those sounds, and you can go around and practice in your own time. But as I said, let's take some questions at the end if you're not sure about how to articulate any of those phonemes. So there's a little bit of an overview again of, we've got actually 140 letter combinations that are illustrated within words. So we've looked at the 44 sounds, and now putting all those sounds into letters, what does that look like? And these are all the variations here. You can see all the different spellings of sounds. I'll just pick on one here. So for oo, you've got double O. You've got a UE in the word blue, you've got an EW for grew, and you've got a U split E for tune. You can see it comes to 140 letter combinations. It's a lot to get through. It just actually emphasizes how challenging and complex the English language is, with all its variations, because of historical goings on over the years. Spellings have changed, influences from different countries demonstrate that. So some of the terminology that you should or could be using, obviously it's down to yourselves as a school how you approach using terminology. Some schools are just comfortable with using sounds and letters, and some schools would prefer to use the correct terminology, phonemes and graphemes. So a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that changes a word. So for the word cat, we've got k, at. I like to use my fingers as well. It's also a nice multisensory visual approach when you're teaching children, when you're breaking down sounds. And the grapheme is a letter or letters representing a phoneme. So for the letter T, it looks like that. This is the A, that's one version of an A, and this is another version of I. You can see it can be represented by 2 or 3 letters. Next term is called digraphs, which is when there are 2 letters making one sound. And we had a go at that when we were articulating phoneme. So we've got sh, k, and e. 2 letters just making one sound, one phoneme. You can also have vowel digraphs, and they contain at least one vowel. And we practiced these earlier. A, E, R, and Oi. So split digraphs, and I actually, from experience, I remember children really grasping this. And for adults, actually, they're the ones who are going, oh, how do I make a child understand this? You know, it used to be called a silent E or a magic E, but actually they do grasp this really, really well. And it's got to be taught fairly explicitly for a child to understand this. So we might say something like, the E on the end gives us the letter name now. So instead of reading it as make even, we say when you see the E and the A together, split by consonant, it tells us its letter name. So this will now be make, often we draw arrows underneath. Bike, whole, mute. So it's given us the letter name. And they're split with a consonant. I think this is one of children's personal favourites, actually, spotting the trigraphs, where there are 3 letters making just one sound. We've got I, J, Ch. So 3 letters there, just making the one sound. It's always good to get children to try and spot this in a word, maybe with a highlighter, or doing a dash or a line underneath these, just so we know that it's one sound rather than doing dots. So let's look at the skill blending for reading. Blending is all about recognizing the letter sound in a written word. So in the word ka, you've got k, up. Just another strategy that we might use with children is getting them to touch their chin, because very young children, the 3-4-year-olds, sometimes find it really hard to hold their fingers together. So a strategy might be placing your finger on your chin up to be able to count the sounds. And then we put those sounds together, we merge them to produce the word ha. So as a little activity, we're going to do some robot talking or sound talking. On the next slide, you'll have a group of images, objects that I want you to choose, and you're going to talk like a robot. You're going to separate the sounds out. And you need to have your robot hands as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the sound all robotic, and then hopefully you will then blend the sound into the whole word. Something that you can do with children. You can show pictures up on the board, or have picture cards on the table, or actual real objects is another one for children to do, and they can do it in pairs. So as a little practice, I will do one for you, and then you can have a go at doing some yourselves as well. So let's see if you can work out what this is. Or, demonstrate this again. So it's one robot action for each sound. Or, hopefully you figured it out that it was 4. Okay. Let's see if you can have a go at some of those other ones as well. I'll have a go at myself. Sh, it, sh, it, shit. Let's try a challenging one. Let's have a go at this next one. At, the, it. Ask the children, how many sounds were there? At, the, it. There are 5 sounds in the word rabbit. What happens with that one, this has come up in quite a lot of my training sessions, is that they try and put the it at the end of rabbit together and think, oh, it's 4 sounds, at, the, it. And I think, well, no, if we're going to be really synthetic about this, synthetic phonics is about individual sounds. You've got a short vowel sound, I, and you've got a t at the end as well. So be really careful with that. Same with ladder, you've got a double D, which is a digraph. It's L, A, D, 4 sounds. If you've got older children who still need a little practice of this, so we're looking at probably year 3 onwards, they don't really want to do robot hands because they did it in the younger years. What about if they take on karate chops instead? So let's have a go at doing bells. B, F, L, that got Alexa going. Okay, so as I said, a nice multisensory visual activity would be using the objects, if you can, or having picture cards or things on the board. So another approach to support blending for reading is having words up on the board, which is this, and then demonstrating these sound buttons to support reading. And I've actually been using these with my 4-year-old niece. And what happens is you can get the child to physically press the button or the dot or the dash. So for rain, let's go back actually and have a go at making the sound as well. Rain. What about for bright? Let's put our sound buttons under each sound. I. 4 phonemes there. I've heard some schools like to use them as beans and sausages as well. What about which? What? It. And finally, for the word straight. See if you can have a go at adding your own sound button yourselves. Let's see how you got on with straight. Yes, it's missing, but it's coming. Here it is. Eight. Right, what have you spotted under straight? We've actually got 4 letters making one sound in that A, another alternative spelling for the A sound. It's not called a quadraph. Lots of people like to think it's a quadraph. It's called a 4-letter grapheme. Okay, so under straight we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phonemes there. So I'd like you just to jot down these 6 words and then add your own sound buttons under each of those words. Okay, 1 button per sound. Have a go at putting those on. I'll give you 1 minute. Okay, let's have a look at the sound buttons here. E, A, M, I, O, How did you get on? Well done. Hopefully that wasn't something too challenging for you all. When children still struggle with adding their own sound buttons, or you've got the very, very young early years children who need more oral blending without any words in front of them or letters, you can have, and I'll just introduce you to Colin the caterpillar, if you can see him. What you can place is just some counters just underneath the caterpillar there, and what you would do then is give the child a word, say it's dog, so it's a bit difficult to demonstrate. It needs to be flat on the surface, but for dog you go D, or go. So demonstrate that with children, and they have one each, and move a counter or a cube or whatever else you want to use up onto Colin's body parts. So let's have another word. Let's go with jump. So we'd have 4 counters: j, hopefully you could all see Colin there. So you're moving the counter to support children blending and hearing those sounds. So segmenting is more towards needed for spelling, okay, but we need to have both those skills concurrently running because they're both helpful for reading and for spelling, but this really supports spelling. So we give the child the whole word, such as dog, and they've got to be able to match the letters to the sounds that they hear. So for dog, we've got a d or g. It's a slightly more harder challenge, a harder skill for children to acquire, because they've got to then think about what letters look like as well. So when they're going to think of the d, quite often with young children, you might get it looking like the letter B. They've got to then think of the middle sound, go back to hear the sounds again, d, o, put it next to the D, and the final sound, g. And for some children with longer words, they do get muddled with the order of letters. So this needs to be taught, again, really explicitly. And one activity you can do is have phoneme frames. And I've brought some here to show you, which simply look like this, some little grids. So that's just for 2 sounds in there, like car would be k-r. You could have a 3 phoneme box, 1 sound in each box, e, o, g. You might ask the child to write the word duck, d, up. Remember, digraphs and trigraphs go in 1 box. This is the word bench, b-e-n-ch. So children are segmenting each sound to support them with their spelling. This is about a 5 phoneme frame. Really great to have. Laminate them. You've got them forever, and you know, if the child has one each in their tray or wherever in school, they can just use them for any phonic activity. And you're going to have a go yourself. So here are 3 words that I'd like you to segment, break them out, and try and create little grids just on a piece of paper, little boxes, and see where you would put those words. Remember, 1 sound per box. I'll give you a minute to write those 3 words out as well. Should we have a look at the answers? There we go. So for train, we needed a 4 phoneme frame box. To brain, for which we need 3. For bricks, the bricks. So children really get used to segmenting words very, very carefully. I think this is a really great activity for sounds that, actually words that have adjacent consonants in them. And I'll give you an example. The word tent has got nt at the end, adjacent consonants, which is actually ties in with phase 4 in the Letters and Sounds programme. Many schools use that. And what children find really hard is when they're saying the word tent, it's really difficult to identify the n sound. So they generally might spell it with a T-E-T, tent, because that's what they can hear. more obviously. So it's really about getting children to break down those sounds really carefully. T, e, n, t, tent. Another example would be stamp, which is a slightly harder sound to identify. Stamp. It's the M, isn't it? The So with this activity, you can really highlight this. So it avoids children missing out those crucial sounds in letters when it's spelling. So we're just going to have a look at the order of the sounds that we should be teaching, particularly for those really early years children. And this is the order. Again, this is stemming from the UK's third phonics programme called Letters and Sounds. That's been used now for many, many years. I certainly used it in my early years of teaching. I think it started coming out in 2006. So the first set is at. I don't know if anybody knows why we start with those four. If anybody's got an idea about that. The reason is because you can spell up to 11 words. There's some plurals in there as well. You can make 11 words and begin to read and spell. So it gets children on the path to reading quite early on with just those four phonemes. And set 2 then develops more words for children to read. So you can see the very first digraph comes in this section here in set 4. And then you've got a couple more digraphs here, the double letter M's. If they're familiar with this sound, quite easy to teach. This is the same sound. There's a few tricky words there that are introduced too. So I mentioned some of those alternative pronunciations for the graphemes. There was this example that we saw earlier, and also this one, the I and the E. Let's have a look. This would have been taught as an I. You can see it here. Quite early on, it's an I. Later in the progression of those phases, it's taught as an I sound. So they're shown that it's an I in some words, but this time the new sound we're learning is an I sound, but it looks just like an I. Let's look at this one as well. This is a common one. They'll be very familiar with this, aren't they? Cat, click, and so on. But this time it's taught as a sound, like sense, city, and centre. So it's really about showing children, giving them the opportunity to practice and rehearse and be exposed to lots and lots of words so they become familiar that in some words it's a k and in some words it will be a s sound, knowing those different alternative pronunciations. And this is a good one, isn't it? Ch. Children really are familiar with this as a ch, but then they are taught it can be a k sound and a sh sound in share. This is where children really have to be taught the phonics phases systematically, and lots of repetition and reminders about previous sounds and introducing these new alternatives. And then, as I mentioned about the A sound, here's 3 options there for A, and for oo, and for that sound we've got the letter C, double S, and a C. Just a few of them. There are obviously many more. I just want to flag up this book because it's a bit of a Bible for phonics. And sometimes when you're trying to find out, well, what other A alternative spellings are there? I can only think of those perhaps. But there are. Remember we saw in the word straight, there was the A-I-G-H. There was something like up to 11 A spelling options. So this will give us all the words, all those alternatives, and also they're color coded so you can see where you can move on to more challenging spellings as well. So it really is a very useful book. You can just order that off Amazon or wherever. Complete Phonic Handbook by Diana Hope. Highly recommend that if you're a teacher of phonics. This is also a great activity called Phoneme Spotters. You can simply Google these. There's lots of them online. It's a short text, a short story even, and you can really identify the sound that is being worked on here. So we might display this on the board or give children a copy. We might read it out and ask children to tap their heads every time they hear the E sound. So let's have a go at this now. I'll read it out. Just tap your head every time you hear the E sound. Tom was very happy. It was the weekend and he was off to the beach with his mum and dad, his puppy and baby Pete. You get the idea, or you could do thumbs up or whatever, or children can tap the tables. Once they've identified the sounds, the teacher could then highlight the letters that make those sounds, the E sound, on the board, or get the children to underline it in a different coloured pen or pencil. And it should look something like this. There's all our different versions of E, all our graphemes that make the E sound. And what you want children to do is to start making some connections here and links. So we might say that the double E is always in the middle of a word. Let's see, are there any other double E's? Yeah, we've got weekend, we've got need, and beep, and sheep. It's always in the middle. It never comes at the end. But which sound does come at the end? We've got the Y, the also making the E sound. This grapheme, the letter Y, comes at the ends of words. And then also the EA in speak is in the middle too. And eat and cream. Once children have identified them, highlighted or underlined, what they can then do is go off and group the words. Children love to group words, sort them out, and be very, very official with all this. So give them the headings there, and then they group the words themselves, they write them out to start making those rules up as well. So you can see there, Y at the end, double E in the middle, E, A, grapheme in the middle too. And actually we can then maybe spot that this E split E is fairly irregular. There aren't that many words with E split E. So that's the less common use of the E sound, whereas these are more regularly seen. So grouping words is another useful task for children to do. You can do that in pairs or individually as well. Some other activities that I would use with children to support blending and segmenting, and some of these are just oral activities to start with, great for a short warm-up at the start of the day or the start of a lesson, or if you want to refocus them after playtime and lunchtime. So I like this. I Spy, instead of using the letter names, we're using the sounds. So I spy with my little eye something starting with the sound E. So you look around the room, light, something that starts with the sound ch, chair. So really getting children to focus on sounds of letters, of letter names. Play, count the sounds. Use our fingers, touch our chin or go down our arm. How many sounds are there in light? I, t. How many sounds are there in chair? Ch, air, only 2. What about window? W, I, n, d, o. There are 5 sounds. What sounds do you hear at the end of clock, book, sock? So instead of just focusing always at the initial starts of words, the initial sounds, get them to listen at the ends as well. Because often we focus heavily on the initial sounds of words. Simon says, put your hands on your head. These are just general things that you can say in the middle of the day. Simon says, fold your arms. Put your hands on your knees. Well, Simon didn't say, so listen out. Children will love those sorts of games. And they're learning and having fun and not realising that they're progressing with their phonics knowledge. So if you can get something like an old biscuit tin or on the radiators or something magnetic, and get a bunch of magnetic letters to spell things that they can see, we can have focus on things in the kitchen and moving those letters around instead of using pens, pencils, or whiteboards and pens, just manipulating those letters and moving them around makes it really tactile for children. It doesn't, when they make a mistake, they can quickly move it around rather than scribbling or rubbing things out. It's great for that. So I really advocate if you can get magnetic letters or wooden letters and so on. Set the timer and see how many tricky words they are able to read and remember. So you can get a timer or an egg timer, flip it over and see how many words they can read that they've been working on in the week. Spot my letters. This is great for those children first term of starting school. Can they spot the letters in their name on the backs of cereal packets or the milk carton or the newspaper, or on the way to school, and they find the letters that are in their name? Those are the very first few they learn. So I'm going to give you a short activity. I'm going to give you actually 5 minutes to try and complete this. You've got this series of words underneath here, underneath the numbers. Let's test your knowledge now. How far have we come in this session? Take a word. Let's start with May. I want you to separate it into its individual sounds and then match it with a number. So for May, A has 2 sounds. So write the word out and then put a number next to it. So I'll give you up to about 4 or 5 minutes to complete that. Okay, I'll probably just speed that up a bit. You can go away and practice that in your own time as a follow-up activity, but here are some answers so far. Okay, you've got through a few of those at the very least. That's also a great activity you can do with children if you have them on little flashcards. Have the number cards as well. Again, as I said, they love to sort, to practice breaking up sounds. They can use their robot hands or karate chops and matching the words to the number card. It's great for a group activity as well. So here are some just recommended websites. Again, lots of interactive phonic activities. You can pick and choose what's suitable for the level that you're teaching at and your children's age group, but certainly lots of resources that you can download, letters and sounds, flashcards, picture cards, and so on. Phonics Play, great activities for children to do interactively as well. Just some recommended reading. As I said, much of this training was based on the UK's Lesson Sounds programme, which is widely used across the United Kingdom. It's still available online, it's archived, but you can just Google it and find materials and lesson plans linked to that. And if you want to develop your own pedagogy and knowledge, there are some key texts there that you can read more on. Again, more activities, how to differentiate, the 4-part lesson plan, how to make teaching multisensory. David Waugh, I'm a big fan of his work. So I would recommend those texts. Just to flag up again how to connect with Veema. So coming to the end now, but we will take some questions. Let's see if we've got anything.
Hello, Alexandra. Thank you very much for that. That was very informative, and I've got to confess that we were in the office and we were actually taking part in all of the activities that you were giving to us.
Yeah, pleased to hear it.
Tina in the office behind me had to stop what she was doing because she was so involved in everything that you were saying. So fantastic there. And thank you for keeping us on our toes as well. You just didn't stop the activities, and it just goes to show how even in webinars we can interact and engage with what's going on with the presentation. So thank you very much for that. So should we take some questions, because there's some questions that have come through in the last 15 minutes. So I have some questions here. If you do have a question for Alexandra, then do get that over to us so that we
to see them. I can only see one line. Expand it. Sorry.
Okay. Shall I take the questions then? I'll read them out. And then
I see questions, but I can't seem to expand it to read them fully.
Okay. Well, we've got one. We'll take the first one here. I've got the first question here. So my children really struggle with blending sounds together. Any advice that you can give for when you're teaching children phonics and about those children that are struggling with blending?
Yes, this does come up a lot actually, because blending is quite a skill. As I said, people will learn those sounds inside out and back to front. You show them a card and they'll tell you the sound, but getting them to put those sounds together, I would certainly have them on individual flashcards, and what I would do is try to get those sounds merging together, or even the magnetic letters, try and get them to be pushed together slowly and slowly. They gradually merge on flashcards or any of those, something tactile that they can physically do. And go back to really the oral blending activities that I've sort of demonstrated, either with Colin, as I said, making the sounds, and then they physically are seen and being put together into a word. Going back to those activities and those games, Simon says, so that children are always hearing it. Let's go with the brick, brick, really over enunciating, and lots of practice. Really, it's really about reinforcement, rehearsal. Can't really do enough of those, really.
And then being animated, I really love that. The fact that you really engage, especially with little children, being animated and lots of different strategies there. Those time-saving tips that as teachers we need and we love to hear. And if you do try those things out this week, get back in touch with us and let us know how it goes. Sometimes when you're trying something new, it doesn't feel quite right until you try it for the second or third time. So, do get in touch with us and let us know how it goes with trying some of these techniques. Can we go to another question? So the next question is, which skills should we teach first, blending or segmenting?
Oh, good question. Well, the 4-part lesson will say you need to do both. Obviously, it's kind of easier to do blending first with your younger children, because you're not really exposing them to the visual word. You're just doing things orally. But actually, with oral segmenting, you can still do as well. So you can have a bag of objects in a secret bag and say, in my bag, I have a og. What do I have in my bag, children? A frog or a F. So I would say you can actually do both in any one phonics lesson, and it's important to do both so children understand both of those skills. They're interchangeable. So really, there isn't one that should come first. Is the answer. Do both.
Thank you for that question that's come in. Next question goes is it right if the child cannot blend, however can spell correctly? And what do you suggest to improve their blending?
Interesting. So they can spell accurately but struggle to blend. Yeah,
that's what it says here.
That's a very rare thing to happen, but in some cases, yeah, I have heard of that. So children spell more confident. But blending, it's pretty much, I think I answered that slightly earlier, really, about giving them lots of opportunities to practice blending for reading. Use those sound buttons, get them to put their finger underneath as well to, you know, make that whole word. So pressing the sound buttons, the dots, the dashes, as I showed earlier. Use of counters. Yeah, blending should quickly.
Oh, I think we lost you there, Alexandra, for a second.
If they're able to.
So we lost you there towards the end. Can you just repeat that again?
The last, what I just said.
Yeah, we just lost the sound there.
Okay. I think I was just saying, just again, going over the range of those blending activities, make it as multi-sensory as possible for that child, doing some tactile elements. But if they're able to spell, then I think the reading, the blending, will follow suit quite quickly. The other thing you could do is separate the letters out so that they can blend separately without it being left to right. So if you have the word, I'll just demonstrate this here. For B, you can have, so hopefully people can see that, separating the letters out so that they can highlight those letters and blend it away from left to right. Because what happens is when you have a word left to right, what they tend to do is they guess. So that goes bit. That's what some children will tend to do if they see a word in order. So trying to separate those letters out is another approach.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We're going to just go for one more question because we are running out of time, and then I'm going to give some information about next week's webinar, because obviously today was our rescheduled webinar from last month, or should I say from January. We are now running a bit behind schedule with our monthly webinar. So our next webinar is actually going to be next week, and we will be sending out some information about that towards the end of this week. But before we get on to that, last question, why do children always use the E in grapheme in the words with I sound, bike?
Yeah, I think just about that, it was slightly breaking up, but the IGH, I sound, I presume.
The IGH, yes.
Yeah, so this is a classic situation as well. You've just taught the grapheme, the trigraph, IGH, and what happens is children start using it everywhere in all words with I. So bike will be B-I-G-H-K, light, oh, that's right, let's go with, yeah, so various words, you just see it everywhere. It's just important to get children to say, let's see if this looks right. So you're giving them all the IGH graphemes, put them in a corner or on display, and say these are the only words that have that grapheme. So when you're teaching something new, like the I split E or IE, just say to those children, well, we can't use the IGH for this word. It sounds the same, but it looks different. And I used to have something in the middle of the table called have a go paper. So little scraps of paper, and just get children to have a go at writing it out. Does it look right to you? Let's go and compare it to our display. Does the word bike look right with an IGH? And actually, they're quite good at saying, no, that looks really odd. So getting them to cross-reference it and being really independent themselves.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Alexandra. I mean, it's just been a fantastic this afternoon or this evening, wherever you're listening to, just to hear some of the strategies, you know, the pedagogy, the ideas that work around phonics. So thank you once again for taking the time to share this information. If you are interested in finding out more about about phonics training or anything covered in today's webinar, then do get in touch with us. Next week's webinar, I know Krista Hazel, you're listening to this evening's webinar. A big shout out to you, because I know our presenter, consultant Krista, is taking next week's webinar, is listening this evening. And our webinar will be on why creativity should be a central focus of your toolkit for the classroom. That's going to be another very interesting session next Tuesday, so please do tune in for that. Thank you once again to everyone who's joined us wherever you are in the world. I love these webinars. It's just connecting global educators everywhere from all over the world. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again next Tuesday. So good night from us.
Bye. Night night.